strong conservative opposition to Prop 8, there have been more than 100 former Republican lawmakers and leaders within the party, this was led by Republican National Committee Chairman Ken Mehlman, who have signed an amicus brief calling for California's ban on same-sex marriage to be overturned. One of them is Nicolle Wallace, a former senior advisor to the McCain campaign. Nicolle, thanks for taking the time. Let's talk about this. We've talked about the legal aspects of this, but there's obviously a huge political piece to it. Tell me first why you decided to put your name onto that amicus brief in support of same-sex marriage. We'll get into the politics in a minute.
Sure. Well, I am very proud to stand with 130 of a lot of my former colleagues from the Bush administration, the Bush White House, and a lot of the lawyers and the legal thinkers were really able to embrace this conservative legal argument that was argued by Ted Olson, who's a very respected legal mind on the right, who as you've been reporting all hour, partnered with David Boyce to lay out and I think articulate the history of the court seeing marriage as a fundamental freedom, and this issue being one, listening to someone who has to defend Prop 8, it reminds me of those who had to defend bans on interracial marriage in 1967 when that was ultimately struck down by the Supreme Court. I mean, you look at where the Supreme Court has historically weighed in, and it has been on the side of freedom. So I think as a conservative who reveres and cherishes the institution of marriage, it was pretty natural for a lot of Republicans, for myself and a lot of my former colleagues, to see this brief as embracing a very conservative principle on marriage as so revered and as so important and special that all families should have the right to raise their children and raise their families as married couples.
And Nicolle, I just want to add, we mentioned there are 131 signers, 130 other than you. People like Tom Ridge, the former governor of Pennsylvania, Christy Todd Whitman, the former governor of New Jersey, Ken Duberstein, chief of staff during the Reagan administration. So these are named people. But I have a question for you.
Sure.
You mentioned this is a conservative principle. This is about freedom. And yet, the party platform, the Republican Party platform, is that marriage is between a man and a woman. Will that change? I've been asking everybody this. I can't get away from the politics of it because it's a big political issue too. Will that change in 2016? Will one of the people running for the presidential nomination on the Republican side, who has a chance to win, be pro-gay marriage, do you think?
Well, I don't know the answer to that, but you and I are probably two of the only people in the National Political Nerds Club who've actually covered platform committees at Republican and Democratic conventions.
How dare you?
So
I'm
we
a
know
proud
that,
member of the Nerd Club.
Let me just put out that is a lagging indicator. I think that you will start to see Republican politicians at a state level and hopefully at a national level who really, no one pays much attention to their stance on marriage equality because it will over time become a non-issue. And let me just say this. If you are running for office and you are trying to court the vote of anyone younger than 40, you oppose marriage equality at your political peril. The numbers for those who support marriage equality for anyone in their 30s are 80%. I can't think of another 80% issue in our politics today. Self-described evangelical Christians under the age of 33 support marriage equality in numbers greater than 60%. So you go to CPAC and you walk those halls and you talk to anybody in their 20s and 30s, you can't find anybody who opposes marriage equality. So this is an issue where the greatest blessing that the Supreme Court hearing today gave us as advocates for marriage equality and as conservative advocates for marriage equality was the opportunity to speak in a sustained manner with the American people about these conservative principles that are entirely consistent with marriage equality.
And yet, Nicolle, I just keep coming back. You mentioned CPAC. It happened a few weeks ago, this big gathering of conservatives. Marco Rubio, if not the biggest rising star in your party, certainly one of them. I think he's 42 years old. He's not on the older end of the spectrum. Made a very clear statement. Look, I'm not going to apologize or be called a bigot for supporting marriage between a man and a woman. Do you need not someone who is out of office, not a Christy Todd Whitman, not a Tom Ridge, people who are not in office anymore? Do you need a Marco Rubio, a Jeb Bush, a John McCain? Do you need someone of that level to say, look, I've held this position before, but this position is it's outdated. I think it doesn't reflect where we are in America, and it doesn't, to your point, reflect conservative values. Do you need someone in your party's leadership, a big to come out and do that in order to really move the party?
Yeah, well, look, we need more people to evolve, which is what they call Democrats who change their position on marriage equality. I think Republicans are entitled to the same gentle term for a complete reversal. But let me just say this: the party that can tolerate and embrace people with a disagreement around some of the most sensitive and rapidly changing social issues is usually the party that prevails. So it goes to my party's strength if under our umbrella we can have a respectful debate and we can understand that people may come down on different sides of this one, but that while this debate is ongoing, while this debate is, I think, unfurling at warp speed, we as a party have room for people who have different views on marriage equality. People like me and people who, haven't evolved yet, or who, and in respect to people who disagree, there is another side to this. There are people who simply disagree with the case we're making, and sure. I think it speaks to my party's strength if we can make room for both points of view in our party.
Well, Nicolle, I think you make a really important point. The warp speed at which this has moved, I think, has caught many Democratic and many Republican politicians by surprise. We've gone in the last decade from majority opposition to majority support, which almost never happens.